Let me tell you a story about a man named Shozo Kaga. Kaga was a video game developer who struck gold when he directed an NES game in 1990, the original Fire Emblem. Being the first RPG to mix in strategy or simulation elements along with the very daring decision to make death permanent, it quickly rose to fame and earned a respectable fan base, which led to 4 more sequels up until Thracia 776 in the year 2000, making it the final release on the Super Famicom as a matter of fact. Then, after that, Kaga crept away from the company that made him a legend. He founded his own studio and continued his work from there. Nobody knows why he chose to do this. Perhaps the answer lies in his farewell project. What did Kaga leave behind as his legacy as a developer for Nintendo?
6年 P 組
P 先生
川島君が転校します。書き換え体操で送りましょう。オーケー。
ありがとうみんな。
書き換え体操はともかく、今回ローソンのロッピーで書き換えるのは新作 RPG ファイアーエンブレムトラキア776。
He made children cry. He made children cry. Well, where do I even start with this? Thracia 776 is well known as both the most creative and the most difficult game in the Fire Emblem series. It presents several new mechanics and gameplay ideas, while at the same time killing you for looking at it funny. This game retired the revival staff, and it's not going to give you any leeway. Heck, there's a cheat code to activate a double experience mode, and if you aren't on top of your game, you're going to need it. Thracia 776 begins with an opening scroll that's oddly in English as well as Japanese. I have no idea why. It's not like they were going to localize the final game on the Super Famicom, so it must be just for style. The game follows Leif, the Prince of Leinster, whose father and mother were slain midway through genealogy by Thracian mercenaries, and his sister gets kidnapped at the same time. Thracia then attacks Leinster Castle and annihilates the knights, except for Finn, who escapes with Leif and travels across Thracia while living in exile, and it all takes place in the year 776, just like when the Declaration was signed. Thracia 776 returns to the format of Mystery of the Emblem, so trading is in and repairing is out. There are a lot of new mechanics to go over, but I suppose we should start with the biggest one, rescuing and its related mechanic, capture. Rescue is a function that allows one unit to carry another unit as if they were both on the same tile. The carrier needs to be heavier than what they're carrying, and their stats are lowered while they're doing this, but you can use this to get a weak unit out of the line of fire if they're out of position, or you can carry slow units further than they could move normally. Flying units make great rescuers for this reason. Dismount is back too, and you can dismount a horseman to rescue him. I have no idea how his horse comes with him. I guess they stay in their Pokeballs. Capturing is a similar function, except you can do it to your enemies with a bit of effort. Capturing an enemy requires defeating them using the capture command, which functions like an attack except your stats are halved during the fight. If they're unarmed, you can just instantly capture them. You can actually trade with captured enemies, meaning you can steal their items before letting them go. This is an amazing addition. If you're low on weapons, you can capture to get some more. Or if you see a rare item or weapon that you really want, you can try and capture that enemy to get it. And it's very rewarding when you pull it off. And you need to capture stuff too, because villagers in this game don't hand you sacks of gold like they used to, and buying stuff is expensive. It's shocking this feature never comes back in the whole series, but I suppose they didn't want players loading their entire convoy with expensive stuff like I always do. Also, thieves promote, and they still pick locks, but now they're able to steal weapons from enemies as well. I remember swiping the books off the mages so that they can't fight back. You can neutralize them completely this way. You can even use the steal command to put your own items into the enemy inventory, though I honestly couldn't tell you if this ever has any practical use whatsoever. Oh, and did I mention the enemy could capture you too? They don't do it often unless your healer is in the line of fire or something, and you can actually abuse this since they always go for the capture if they can, meaning you could capture them back easily in retaliation. But actually, Thracia 776 has a pretty advanced AI. The healers are able to do stuff like warp, barrier, restore, and if they break their weapons, they'll actually rush to the nearest shop and buy new ones. How crazy is that? There are even enemy dancers in some chapters, and they do exactly what the dancers on your side do. This game knows how to do a lot. Character stats have tons of additions as well. Skills are here again, but lovers aren't a mechanic anymore since the story doesn't support it. Leadership stars are still there, and movement stars are a new stat. Having them gives a unit a random chance of taking another turn for free, and yes, some enemies have these as well. Each unit also has a hidden stat that multiplies their crit rate if they're fast enough to get a second attack in a fight. This time around there's only one promotion item that works for everybody, and thank Naga, any unit can visit a village, not just the main lord. Weapon ranks are letters again, and this time they actually rise both when you promote and if you use that weapon type enough. Speaking of weapons, they always had a weight stat that lowers speed when it's equipped, but the new build stat can negate the speed loss from using a heavy weapon. Build and even movement power can grow like your other stats do when you level up as well. Of course, this all comes with a few downgrades. Though the weapon triangle returns, the bonus you get for it is now incredibly insignificant, likely due to the indoor chapters taking away your lances like in Mystery of the Emblem, and character stats other than HP now cap at 20 despite this not being the case in Genealogy or even Gaiden. The supply convoy also isn't tied to the main character, it's in a fixed location on the map again, and this time it's not even in every map. But the biggest downgrade of all is that you can't choose where your units begin each map. You kind of could in the previous games in a roundabout way, but you didn't really need to. In Thracia 776, there are maps where your army splits up, and it would be kind of nice to choose where your units start in that situation. Thracia 776 is not a game that plays nice. It's already difficult when you don't get any free money, there's no revival wand, and enemies are smarter than ever. It's worse when you start to get the feeling the game is doing everything in its power to ruin your game. Have you noticed that accuracy in combat caps at 99 and floors at 1? No matter what you do, there's always that slim chance that your attack misses and the enemy's hits, and this is especially annoying after playing the later games where they roll two numbers and average them to determine accuracy checks to make it more consistent. This is also the only Fire Emblem game where any staff you cast can miss. Healing staves can miss, barrier can miss, heck, even warp can miss. At least those vulneraries fully heal you when used though, so maybe you better stock up on those. By far the most annoying of all the new mechanics is Fog of War, a horrible creation that they lifted from Advance Wars for no other reason than it's yet another layer of artificial difficulty. Fog of War hides all enemies outside of your own vision range, which can be increased with torch items or torch staves, which can miss too naturally. Thracia 776 takes it a step further, however, by hiding everything outside of your vision range, not just the enemies, meaning you can't even see where you're going. The map is hidden too, all meaningless to anyone who's played the game before and knows every map already, but this is really not good for the first-timers who are going to feel like they're lost in a giant maze. And you know something? These guys also made Super Famicom Wars just a few years earlier, and that game doesn't hide the tiles in Fog of War, so this was a conscious decision, not an accident. Then again, it was also a conscious decision to make status effects not wear off over time like in Genealogy, so any poisoned or sleeping or silenced or berserked unit is going to stay that way until you use Restore on them or finish the chapter. Fine if you want to use poison to grind healers, I guess, but the other status is basically take a unit out of the game permanently until they're cured. Oh, and by the way, you might be thinking that you could steal some of the poisoned weapons the enemies are carrying. No. When you take them, they instantly lose their poison status. I have no idea how that works. Oh, and you'll just love this last one. Maps now have multiple objectives besides just seizing a throne. Some want you to kill a boss, some want you to survive a certain number of turns, And then there are the escape chapters. You'll see a red arrow on escape maps. If Leaf enters that arrow, the map is cleared. Easy, right? Well, guess what? If Leaf enters the arrow, any unit that hasn't entered it is permanently removed from the party. So you have to get every other unit to that red arrow first, or you lose them. Gee, I sure hope nobody does this in the first escape map and winds up playing the next one with Leaf only, and of course by the time they figure this out, they've already saved the game with the characters lost. This game was originally released on the Nintendo Power service, no relation to the magazine of the same name. Users could purchase a blank cartridge and then download a game onto it. If they decided they didn't like the game, they could overwrite it with a new one. Thracia 776 was released this way originally before getting a standard cartridge release later on, probably because the mechanics of this game are so completely obtuse that not including a manual somehow would be stupid. They knew it would be stupid, but oh, they went and did it anyways! One idea that returns in the later games are the side quests. If you fulfill certain conditions in certain maps, you can get bonus chapters which lets you obtain more items and experience that you'll probably need. The problem is, in Thracia 776, seriously important characters are in these side quests. Take the first one for example. You get Chapter 2X for saving all the houses in Chapter 2. Clearing 2X lets you get the archetypical thief and cleric characters. Oh, and the thief has to be captured to recruit him, so if you don't do that, or miss the side quest completely, you don't have a thief in Chapter 3, so no grabbing the chests or opening doors if you don't capture the enemies holding the keys. And you get no healer either, which also means you lose a Myrmidon and another cleric later on. If you miss Chapter 4X, you don't get the mage character and his overpowered wind magic, and you miss the brave sword available in it as well. Miss Chapter 12X, there goes your shot at a promoted thief, another cleric, a Myrmidon with a nice skill, and even a dancer. And the funny part is, the game's ranking system only grades you on turn count and party size this time, so you have to get every side quest with a new character in it, that is to say, all of them but 2, to get the best rank. You don't even realize half this shit until you've saved, and at that point it's already too late! Oh, but I've neglected to mention something that will make you tear your hair out. This game implements a fatigue system. Characters have a fatigue meter that increases with every action, such as attacking or healing. If the character's fatigue is higher than their max HP, they can't be used in the next battle unless they use a new item called a stamina drink. I get the idea here, they want you to not use the same units in every battle over and over again, but apparently they didn't consider the possibility of an important character being unable to be used in a chapter where they recruit somebody or can snag a cool item. One of your Myrmidons has a chance to learn the Astra skill in one chapter and one chapter only. I sure hope she isn't fatigued when the time comes to deploy her for this. I guess my only advice is keep those stamina drinks handy. You can pick up quite a lot of them in one of the side quests too, naturally. Also, don't get too attached to those cool lances, like the Brave Lance you start the game with, because only 2 characters can even use lances indoors due to dismount returning from Mystery of the Emblem. Only this time, because weapon ranks are tracked on a per weapon basis, your lance users might be stuck with the weakest swords if they dismount. Are you starting to understand the idea that this game might not have the greatest design in the world? But you might be wondering if the levels themselves are designed to kill you as much as the mechanics seem to be. I can point to dozens of examples of maps in this game that are trying to be, I don't know, the Dark Souls of Fire Emblem or something? Chapter 8X has an infamously powerful boss in it that murders you in seconds if you aren't fast enough. Chapter 11 has an infamous trap where your characters are locked in a small room surrounded by ballistae. Indoor ballistae, mind you. Also, they get to fire twice if their target has the dual skill, which causes a second round of combat if the unit is faster than the opponent. Since the ballistae weigh a ton, they're bound to be slower than any unit with the skill. Here's a good one. This is the first Fire Emblem to throw in a route split where you can pick your fucking poison. What's your favorite? Rushing into a barrage of ballistae fire in an enemy boss with 10 leadership stars, giving the entire enemy army the biggest boost in history? Or a slog through dark forests with invisible warp tiles that warp your units around, while dark bishops teleport themselves with a new rewarp staff. Even the fucking character recruitments are obtuse as fuck. To recruit one of the mage knights in this game, you have to have one of your other characters be fucking dead, and there is no hint or plot justification for this. Another character is a Falco Knight that you have to capture, but because she's mounted, there's no choice but to put her to sleep so she dismounts. Yeah, I hope you have a sleep staff handy for that one. The game never, ever gives any clues or hints as to who you recruit anybody with, either. But the fucking worst is Xavier, the X-Man of Fire Emblem. See, his generals were all forced into working for the enemy, so to recruit Xavier, you have to free the NPC hostages, then have the hostages talk the generals out of fighting you, but only one hostage can speak with one specific general each, and the castle quarters can get crowded and clogged and cause a fucking traffic jam, and I'm not going through all of this just for one single lousy general! Ranked runs have to do this, of course. I tell them good luck, but they already have their methods for doing this, so as long as you copy what they do, I guess we have no right to complain about this crap! What I consider the worst chapter in the history of Fire Emblem, even though it honestly isn't, but I'm still bitter, is Chapter 22, known as the River of Blood. Remember that boss I mentioned with 10 leadership stars? Not only is he there, there's 2 more bosses too, taking the grand total of leadership stars all the way up to 20. One of the bosses is an asshole named Reinhardt, who has a spell that lets him attack twice, a skill that randomly blocks enemy attacks entirely, another skill that lets him attack first on the player phase, another skill that randomly gives him extra attacks, the fucking dual skill on top of all of this, and his stats are through the roof naturally. They even drop the first bridge after you cross it, so you'll be cornered when he starts attacking, and I'm supposed to talk to him with Olwen so she gets an overpowered sword? You all probably remember these 2 from Fire Emblem Heroes because they randomly decided this horrible chapter was worth paying homage to. What makes this even worse in my opinion is that they knew how horrible it was and put something in place to make it very easy to skip if you can't beat it the normal way. The Warp Staff. I haven't mentioned it yet, but the Warp Staff is back and it has infinite range like in Mystery of the Emblem. It can be used to skip entire chapters by warping Leaf to the Cease tile, and the fact that they put one in this very chapter confirms to me that every bad decision in this game was intentional. You don't make something impossible to beat and then offer a way to skip past it so the player doesn't have to waste time trying over and over. You make something reasonable that can be beaten in a reasonable amount of time, so that even if the player fails, they know they've gotten better at the game when they actually win. And you want to know the great irony here? After all of this, the final boss isn't worth mentioning aside from how he can turn your characters to stone. He's just another Dark Bishop that the game tries to make you hate by saying he caused Leaf's parents to be slain, and I guess something about child hunts. The narrative of Thracia 776 features actually excellent character and world building, but the game mysteriously doesn't end with Leinster's liberation. Instead, it goes on a little longer and then just stops with Manster's liberation. This means that the story of Thracia 776 overlaps slightly with some of the events in Genealogy, which is really weird and makes it seem the story kinda just stops and expects you to play out the rest of Genealogy's second half if you want the complete tale. Look, I know I've been mostly angry this entire time, but let me point out that the game can still be fun. Capturing is fun. Hoarding items is fun. Abusing the growth-boosting scrolls to max out your characters is fun. Maxing your thieves by equipping the EXP doubling elite sword and then stealing or dodging over and over is amusing to pull off, especially if you thought of it yourself. There's even a method to steal the final boss's weapon, not that anyone can use it, but it's funny and amusing and takes a little bit of lateral thinking in order to figure out how to do it. And let's be real here, none of this crap I ranted about comes anywhere even close to the level of assholery presented by the Dragon Mountain in Fire Emblem Gaiden, which puts Alm through increasing swarms of dragon zombies until Celica completes her half of the chapter. Only reason I didn't mention this back in the Gaiden video is because talking about such horrific creations tends to invoke Ragnarok if you think about it too much. So yeah, that's Thracia 776, one of the most insane creations ever produced in the SRPG genre, and this one is honestly only for the people that appreciate insanely hard ROM hack style level design. I appreciate the game mechanics because there are good ideas there. I love capture, etc. But just what in the world were the developers doing with the level design? It's like either they wanted to make the game specifically for the only people crazy enough to obtain it considering its availability, or they wanted to kill off Fire Emblem completely. I realize it's pure speculation to say this, but it's hard to imagine any other reason why Shozo Kaga would have left Nintendo besides them kicking him out after creating this. Oh yeah, and you know what else? Someone made a Kaizo hack of Thracia. A Kaizo hack of a Kaizo game. Does this madness ever stop? Maybe when we move on to a new console, everything will be nice and calm once again. Next time, we see what Fire Emblem does on the GBA, without its creator.